So Project Lombok is a Java library that helps generate boilerplate code. In other words, it allows us to spice up our Java code a bit. For example, in Java, we have to write getters and setter methods, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. And with other JVM languages like Groovy or Kotlin, we get them automatically. So with Project Lombok, we don't actually have to write our getters and setters and many other methods that are very common, such as the equals method, hashcode, and toString. Now these methods will be generated for us by Lombok, and this really simplifies your development and makes you more productive. It also saves a lot of time not having to write this boilerplate code anymore. So basically it allows you to write less code and keep your code cleaner, especially with JPA entities that you'll see later in the course. So Lombok uses the annotation processor API, and when your project gets compiled, Lombok kicks in and generates code for you. Now the final code compiled with Lombok and without Lombok looks the same, but as you'll see, the actual source code file is much cleaner. Modern IDEs like IntelliJ support Project Lombok. So here's a couple of the annotations that are included with Lombok. Firstly, the getter annotation, and that can annotate any field to let Lombok generate the default getter automatically. And as in the case of a normal getter, returns the field and is named getName if, for example, the field was called name, or isName if the field's type is Boolean. And setter works a similar way, but for setters, it's named setName if the field is called named, returns void, and takes one parameter of the same type as the field, and it simply sets the field to this value. So we've also got toString to generate boilerplate code for the toString method. The equals and hashcode annotation will generate equals and hashcode methods. Required args constructor will generate a constructor with required arguments. And another handy one is SLF4J. That annotation will generate a private static final field for the SLF4J logger. Now there are many more annotations, but we're going to be discussing some of the other ones as we go through the course. But you'll see hands-on usage of these other annotations in the next few videos. Another really good one is the data annotation, and that's at class level, and that generates boilerplate code for the POJO, or plain old Java object, and basically combines a lot of these other setters, the getter, the setter, the toString, required args constructor, and the equals and hashcode annotations. The constructor is not generated if it has been declared already. Okay, so here on screen we've got a simple class person with two fields, first name and last name. You can see that there's a getter and setter for each field. So this is the usual boilerplate code that you'd write in Java, or alternatively you'd get IntelliJ to create for you. But let's now see a comparison with Lombok annotations. So here you can see the difference with Lombok. We just add the annotation, the getter and setter in this case, on the field, and it'll generate the getter and setter for that field. So ultimately the compiled code is the same, but as you can see the source code is different. There's less source code to go through and have to maintain. Now if we add another field like age, then we need to add the getter and setter annotation on that new field. But there's even a shorter way still of doing it with Lombok, so let's move on to the next slide. Okay, in this example, the getter and setter annotations are at class level on the class itself. There's now a new field, age. So basically this is the same as the example on the left-hand side, but it's now more robust. And that's because in this case, if we add another field to the class, for example, age as we've got here, the getter and setter will be generated for us for that new field and any other ones you create as well. So without Lombok, we'd need to write two new methods, in other words, the getAge and setAge method, or we'd have to use your IDE, such as IntelliJ, to generate that code for you. But you can see in this case, the method's on the left-hand side, and I had to reduce the size of the font to make this all fit. So you can see there, even if you've got this generated code for you automatically with your IDE, there's still a fair bit of code to maintain, and it can take you a little while just to scan through that class to make sure there's nothing that is out of the ordinary. In other words, if it's not a plain old Java object or not. But the code on the right-hand side, as you can see, is far more concise, easier to maintain, and at compile time it ends up being exactly the same as the code on the left-hand side anyway. So that's how Lombok can really be very helpful for you, and your code will be a lot easier to write. You really don't have to look at a lot of that mundane or boilerplate code. It'll generate and maintain it for you automatically. So it might be a little bit confusing at the start with so many different annotations, but once you get the gist of it, you'll see how quickly and easy it is